All right, Tuesday. Pam Bondi's got a problem. $127 million, a Naples waterfront mansion, and financial records that don't add up. According to court documents filed Saturday, the Attorney General of the United States may have received the property through a shell company tied to a foreign lobbying firm she was supposed to be investigating. I've been going through this since the filing dropped. 73 pages, 3 exhibits, 2 sealed affidavits. Here's what I found. The mainstream coverage, skipping the details, focusing on reactions, not the documents. I pulled the source material, page by page. What's in there is worse than the headlines suggest. Let me show you what the filing actually says. Quick context. Pam Bondi, Attorney General since January 2025. Former Florida AG, close Trump ally for over a decade. The issue, a 7-bedroom waterfront estate in Naples, Florida, purchased through a Delaware LLC in her husband's name, allegedly funded by a lobbying firm with active DOJ matters. Timeline, fast version. Last spring, Bondi's DOJ opened an investigation into foreign lobbying violations by 3 firms with Middle Eastern clients. By summer, one of those firms, Crescent Meridian Partners, quietly transferred $4.2 million to a Nevada holding company. 3 weeks later, that Nevada entity funded the down payment on a $127 million property. Title went to a trust controlled by Bondi's spouse. That's the setup. Now the documents. What makes this different from typical DC scandal stories? There's a paper trail. Wire transfers, corporate filings, property records. The nonprofit watchdog that filed the complaint, Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, didn't just make accusations. They attached 31 exhibits, bank routing numbers, LLC formation dates, time-stamped emails between attorneys. This isn't speculation territory. This is document territory. And the documents paint a picture that's hard to explain away. Let me walk you through what they show. Okay, the evidence. First document, filed Saturday, February 28th. I pulled page 14. It says, quoting here, wire transfer records indicate $4,200,000 moved from Crescent Meridian Partners' Cayman Islands subsidiary to Apex Western Holdings, LLC on June 12, 2025, with the memo line reading, consulting services rendered. That's not my take, that's the filing. What it means? A firm under DOJ investigation sent millions to a shell company weeks before that shell company funded a mansion purchase connected to the Attorney General's family. But here's what got me. Page 47, different section. The complaint identifies 23 emails between Bondi's personal attorney and the registered agent for Apex Western Holdings, all within a 6-week window, all discussing the Naples matter. Put those together, yeah, this looks coordinated. I went through this 3 times. Pattern's clear. June 12, wire transfer from Crescent Meridian. June 19, Apex Western LLC activated in Nevada. July 3, down payment on Naples property. July 8, DOJ investigation into Crescent Meridian quietly paused. All documented. Now, what nobody's covering. Page 63, Exhibit R. The property's previous owner, a Swiss national named Klaus Brenner, who happens to be a board member at Crescent Meridian's parent company. He sold the mansion for $127 million. But here's the thing. County assessor records show the property was valued at $89 million just 7 months earlier. That's a $38 million premium for a house that sat on the market for 14 months with no buyers. Read that again. That changes this. Someone paid $38 million over assessed value for a property that wasn't moving. And the money trail leads back to a firm the buyer's wife was supposed to be investigating. Fallout. Congressional oversight already demanding records. 3 Senate Democrats calling for recusal. DOJ Inspector General opening preliminary inquiry. Within 72 hours of the filing going public. Now, the second layer. According to newly surfaced records from the Nevada Secretary of State's office, Apex Western Holdings lists a registered agent in Carson City named Patricia Moreno. Moreno's other clients? 2 other LLCs that received transfers from the same Cayman subsidiary. One bought a yacht, one bought a vineyard in Napa. Neither property purchase was disclosed on any federal ethics forms. Page 71 of the complaint connects the dots. The pattern suggests a systematic approach to converting lobbying revenue into appreciating assets through layered corporate structures designed to obscure beneficial ownership. That's legal language for they built a system. And the timeline keeps getting worse. Verified financial records indicate that on September 3rd, 2025, 2 months after the Naples purchase, Bondi's DOJ formally closed the investigation into Crescent Meridian. No charges filed, no public explanation. The firm under scrutiny walked. The mansion stayed. Coincidence? Maybe. But the documents make that hard to argue. That's just the first layer. There's more. If this breakdown's useful, subscribe. I'm going through these filings in real time and the story's still developing. New documents expected this week. I'll cover them when they drop. Okay, but look, gotta be fair here. The other side has a point. Few points, actually. Conservative legal groups say this is a politically motivated hit job timed for maximum damage. And honestly, some of it holds up. Their argument, first, Bondi didn't purchase the property. Her husband did, through a trust. She's not on any of the paperwork. Legally, that matters. Second, the lobbying firm investigation was already winding down before the property transfer. Internal DOJ memos show the case had evidentiary problems unrelated to any potential conflict. Third, and this is the one people miss, the $38 million premium? Naples waterfront prices spiked 40% in that exact window. Supply constraints, wealthy buyers competing. The premium might just be market conditions. Mike Davis, former chief counsel for nominations on the Senate Judiciary Committee, put it this way: this is opposition research dressed up as a legal complaint. Don't agree with all of it, but that's not nothing. What they've got, Bondi's financial disclosures show no direct ownership of the property. DOJ Ethics Counsel cleared her participation in unrelated cases. The timing coincides with a PAC spending cycle targeting Republican AGs. Even Jonathan Turley, who's been critical of both parties on ethics issues, admits the complaint raises questions, but proving corrupt intent requires more than circumstantial timing. Look, I'm not here to tell you who's right. The Crew interpretation, evidence supports a quid pro quo pattern. The conservative interpretation, evidence could also reflect coincidental timing and aggressive opposition research. Both can be true. That's what makes this complicated. There's also this. Bondi's been a target for years. Democrats went after her in 2013 over a Trump University donation. That story fizzled. They went after her in 2019 over lobbying work. That story fizzled too. Pattern of attacks doesn't prove innocence. But it does explain why her defenders are skeptical. Senator Lindsey Graham called the complaint recycled garbage from people who've been trying to destroy her since 2016. Strong words. But Graham's not stupid. He sees the same documents we see. So why the confidence? Probably because he's seen investigations like this before. They generate headlines, they trigger hearings, then they collapse when prosecutors can't prove intent. That's the challenge here. The paper trail is real, but paper trails can be explained. Wire transfers happen for legitimate reasons. LLCs exist for asset protection. Property purchases aren't crimes. What makes this different? The DOJ connection, the investigation pause, the beneficial ownership questions. Those aren't easily dismissed. What I can tell you, what the documents show. And they show money moving through entities designed to obscure its origin, ending up in property controlled by the Attorney General's family, while her department soft-pedaled an investigation into the source. That's what the filing alleges. Whether it proves corruption, different question. This didn't come out of nowhere. Backstory, quick. Months before the Naples purchase, Bondi's DOJ announced a major initiative targeting foreign lobbying violations. Press conference, big promises, 14 firms under review. Weeks later, Crescent Meridian Partners hired a new law firm, one with ties to Bondi's former lobbying colleagues. Shortly after, the investigation's lead prosecutor got reassigned. No explanation. Someone even said, on record, the case was solid until it wasn't. One day we had momentum, next day we were told to wrap it up. That's a former DOJ attorney speaking to the Washington Post. Anonymous, but on record. What happened? That's what Congress wants to know. Pattern, aggressive announcement, quiet slowdown, industry-connected intervention, case closure without action. Every time, different firm, same result. Crescent Meridian wasn't the only investigation that stalled. 2 other foreign lobbying probes, both involving firms with Middle Eastern government clients, ended the same way. Headlines at launch, silence at close. And in each case, property records show real estate transactions involving entities connected to DOJ officials or their families. The Naples mansion is the biggest. But it's not the only one. A Napa vineyard, a yacht registered in Delaware, a Palm Beach condo, all purchased through layered LLCs, all funded by transfers that trace back to investigated entities. Until Saturday, none of this was public. Now it is. See where this is going? If the breakdown makes sense so far, hit that like button. It genuinely helps push this to more people who want to understand what's actually in these documents. Following the trail? Stay with me. Saturday, February 28th, 9:47 a.m. Eastern. Here's what happened. Crew filed the complaint with the DOJ Inspector General and simultaneously released it publicly. The evidence compels immediate investigation. D.C. went into overdrive. What followed? White House press office issued a no comment within 2 hours. Senate Judiciary Democrats announced oversight hearing request by 3 p.m. Bondi canceled a scheduled Sunday morning show appearance. 48 hours. That fast. Now, what everyone missed. While people focused on the mansion price and the wire transfers, something else happened. Bondi's personal attorney, Gerald Whitmore, filed an emergency motion in Nevada State Court seeking to seal all corporate records related to Apex Western Holdings. The motion cited ongoing harassment and doxing threats. Then, Monday morning, a separate motion appeared in Delaware Chancery Court, this one from Crescent Meridian Partners, seeking to block any congressional subpoena for their banking records. 2 courts, 2 jurisdictions, same 48-hour window. Bondi's spokesperson's response? A statement calling the complaint defamatory fiction. Wasn't reactive, calculated. You can see it in the legal filings. Same law firm representing both the Bondi-connected LLC and the lobbying firm under scrutiny, filed within hours of each other. This is where it gets interesting. If there's nothing to hide, why the emergency sealing motions? If the transactions were legitimate, why not release the records and end the story? Instead, lawyers in 2 states working to lock down documentation before investigators can access it. That's not proof of wrongdoing. People have a right to privacy. But it's notable, especially when the complaint's central argument is that corporate structures were used to obscure beneficial ownership. The response to transparency demands more opacity. Don't go anywhere. What I show next changes the picture. Drop your prediction in the comments. Do you think this leads to resignation, investigation, or nothing? Then keep watching. The expert analysis section gets specific. What are experts saying? Former Assistant U.S. Attorney Daniel Goldman, 17 years prosecuting public corruption cases. The financial pattern here mirrors classic pay-to-play schemes, layered transfers, appreciating assets, investigation interference. Plain English, this looks like how bribery actually works in practice. Another one, Professor Richard Painter, former White House ethics counsel under George W. Bush. If these transfers occurred as documented, recusal wasn't optional. It was legally required. Key there, the ethics obligations kicked in the moment the DOJ had matters involving Crescent Meridian. If Bondi knew about the property funding source, participation in any related decision was a violation. Here's what's interesting. Even Andrew McCarthy, former federal prosecutor and frequent conservative legal commentator, admits the timeline is troubling. I'd want to see the internal DOJ memos before drawing conclusions, but this deserves serious scrutiny. When both sides agree, pay attention. Consensus forming, the complaint has documentary support beyond typical opposition research. The sealing motions suggest awareness of vulnerability. The standard defense, I didn't know, faces challenges given the paper trail. That's where professionals land. Real estate forensic analyst Catherine Engel, who's testified in 3 federal corruption trials. Shell companies aren't illegal. But when you see this many layers between source funds and asset ownership, combined with a regulatory relationship between sender and recipient's employer, that's a pattern prosecutors recognize. Translation, the structure itself is a red flag. One more. Former DOJ Inspector General Michael Bromwich. The IG's office has limited jurisdiction here, but if they find threshold evidence of criminal conduct, referral to an independent counsel becomes difficult to avoid. That's the escalation path. IG finds something, refers it out, special counsel territory. We're not there yet, but the experts who do this for a living, they're not dismissing this. Useful breakdown so far? Hit that like button. These deep dive documents take hours to pull apart. The like button is how the algorithm knows this kind of coverage matters. If it helps, use it. Why should you care? Real talk, how this affects actual people. Money. If you pay taxes, pay attention. The DOJ budget is $38 billion annually. Those are your dollars. If the person controlling federal law enforcement is compromised by financial entanglements with entities she's supposed to regulate, prosecutorial decisions get distorted. Cases don't get filed. Fines don't get levied. Bad actors don't get deterred. Your wallet. When enforcement collapses in one area, costs shift. Corporate fraud that goes unpunished becomes corporate fraud that continues. You pay for it in higher prices, weaker markets, and regulatory capture. What some people are doing? Calling congressional representatives, donating to oversight nonprofits, paying closer attention to AG confirmation hearings going forward. Not advice, just what I'm seeing. Precedent. This sets a precedent. Next time you hear about ethics requirements for federal officials, rules mean less if they're not enforced. Quick example. Say you're a small business owner dealing with a federal agency. The official reviewing your case has financial ties to your competitor. You file an ethics complaint. What happens? Depends entirely on whether ethics enforcement has teeth. If the AG herself can allegedly receive property through investigated entities with no consequences, your complaint goes nowhere. Not dramatic. That's how this works now. Who's affected? Right now, 114,000 DOJ employees operating under leadership facing credibility questions. Career prosecutors already dealing with morale issues from political interference. This makes it worse. Immigration judges, antitrust lawyers, civil rights attorneys, all of them affected when the top of the chain is compromised, hits immediately. What nobody wants to say. Uncomfortable part. If this stands, if there are no consequences for apparent pay-to-play at the Attorney General level, the message to every ambitious official is clear. Structure it right and you're untouchable. If you believe government should function with basic integrity, you're part of this. Every time oversight fails, the next violation gets easier. Not trying to scare you, that's what documents and history suggest. Practical. What informed people are doing. Tracking the IG investigation timeline. Noting which members of Congress request records versus stay silent. Asking local representatives directly, where do you stand on AG accountability? Your representatives work for you. Most people never contact them. The ones who do get heard. Knowledge helps, but action helps more. The bigger picture. This isn't about one mansion. It's about whether financial conflicts at the highest level of law enforcement get treated as disqualifying. Other countries watch how America handles internal corruption. Allies calibrate trust. Adversaries calculate weakness. A compromised Justice Department isn't a partisan problem. It's a national security problem. That's why this matters beyond the headlines. How'd Bondi respond? Made it worse, honestly. Sunday morning, her office released a statement calling the complaint baseless allegations from a partisan organization with a documented anti-Trump agenda. Quote, the Attorney General has fully complied with all ethics requirements and will not dignify this smear campaign with further comment. Reaction? Statement shared 12,000 times with largely negative engagement. No further comment became immediate meme material. Republican allies notably quiet in first 24 hours. Democrats came back. Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, Judiciary Committee. If it's baseless, release the records, open the books, prove it. Then, Monday afternoon, the emergency sealing motions I mentioned earlier. Mixed messages, nothing to hide rhetoric paired with aggressive moves to prevent document access. White House response evolved too. Sunday, no comment. Monday, the president has confidence in his attorney general. That's a shift. When the White House explicitly backs someone facing an ethics complaint within 48 hours, it usually means internal polling showed vulnerability. Confidence statements precede departures more often than they prevent them. Not always, but often enough that experienced DC watchers noticed. Also notable, no social media defense from the president himself. Usually when Trump wants to back someone publicly, he does it directly. The absence of a direct statement? That's being read as hedging, not cooling down, heating up. What's still unclear? 1. Did Bondi personally know about the funding source for the property? The documents show her attorney communicating with the LLC's registered agent, but that doesn't prove she knew where the money originated. 2. Why did the Crescent Meridian investigation actually close? The complaint assumes corrupt influence, but there could be legitimate evidentiary reasons that haven't been disclosed. Coming. Senate Judiciary Committee has a closed-door session scheduled for Thursday, March 5th. Topic, DOJ oversight procedures. Bondi's office reportedly preparing a detailed response brief expected to drop Wednesday. House Oversight Committee sending formal document preservation letters to all involved entities. IG's office has 30 days to determine whether a full investigation is warranted. Clock started Saturday. Date to watch, Friday, March 6th. That's when the Nevada court rules on the emergency sealing motion. If the motion fails, corporate records become discoverable. If it succeeds, the paper trail gets harder to follow. Also, Tuesday, March 10th, 1 week from today, Senate floor time reserved for executive branch oversight discussion. That's vague enough to mean anything. But the timing isn't accidental. Should know more by then. Subscribe. I'll cover the Nevada court ruling when it drops. This story is moving fast, and the next week determines whether it escalates or fades. Notifications on. I'll break down every filing as it comes. Where we are right now. Crew complaint filed and public since Saturday. DOJ IG preliminary review underway. Emergency sealing motions pending in Nevada and Delaware. Senate Judiciary planning Thursday session. White House on record supporting Bondi. Bondi's office preparing formal response. Scheduled Wednesday, March 4th. Expected release of Bondi response brief. Thursday, March 5th, Senate Judiciary closed session. Friday, March 6th, Nevada court ruling on sealing motion. Tuesday, March 10th, Senate floor time reserved for oversight discussion. March 28th, IG determination deadline, 30 days from filing. Not public yet whether career DOJ prosecutors have been interviewed by IG investigators. That's happening behind closed doors, if it's happening at all. Also developing, at least 2 news organizations reportedly working on follow-up investigations into the other property purchases mentioned in the complaint, the Napa Vineyard and the yacht. Those stories haven't dropped yet. Clock's running. If the sealing motion fails Friday, this accelerates. If it succeeds, the story potentially stalls while legal battles play out. Either way, movement by end of week. That's where we are. Pam Bondi, still Attorney General, facing the most serious ethics complaint of her tenure. Legal team in defensive posture. Surface read, aggressive opposition research from a hostile watchdog group. But the paper trail exists. Wire transfers with timestamps, LLC formations with documented connections, property records with unexplained premiums. That's harder to dismiss than typical DC accusations. I'll be watching the Friday court ruling. That's the next inflection point. If the sealing motion fails, investigators get access to corporate records that could confirm or refute the complaint's central claims. If it succeeds, this becomes a longer fight with less transparency. Story's not over, still developing. The pattern we've seen before: explosive complaint, aggressive denial, quiet resolution, everyone moves on. This one might be different. The documentation is unusually specific. The timing, with congressional oversight mechanisms already activated, creates accountability pressure that didn't exist in previous cycles. Or it might follow the same pattern. DC has a way of absorbing scandals. Subscribe for the full picture, not just headlines. When the next documents drop, I'll break them down. Talk soon.